All right, thanks a lot for joining us on this Wednesday. What a week already, and it's continuing. We have two storms, one on the west coast, one on the east. I'm Jaclyn. It's nice to have you along. Let's get into it. Lots of moisture moving in on the west coast with flooding potential, strong winds. Haven't heard of a lot of power outages at this point, although yesterday there was. But actually, there's a really great Twitter account that I recommend you follow. It's 50 Shades of Van. It's one of our meteorologists, Tyler Hamilton, who writes a blog. So if you live in that area out west, it's a really great blog. He has a lot of updates. But then we see the moisture moving in. We see these strong winds. We could see winds gusting at around 80 to 90 kilometers an hour. Before I get into this, let's take you there and show you what it looks like. Yeah, this now the sun is up, Deb, and we can really get an idea of these waves that you're talking about. Give me an idea of how high that seawall actually is. Maybe she can't hear us. Okay, we'll come back to Deb. We're having a bit of a technical. Did you see those waves? Those were huge. And you always got to remember, because I remember when I was chasing Hurricane Gonzalo, you know, the waves are coming in and they're crashing and they're going 100 feet in the air. But keep in mind that the cliff that we were on was also 50 to 100 feet in the air. So really, really impactful. So I want to know how high that seawall is, and then you can see the overspray above that. So we'll get an update from her momentarily. Ho Sound, North Shore, Oyster River, and Kingcome River all expected to potentially get into some of this flooding. And where Deb is, that actual seawall, by the way, has been compromised due to the winds. A 70-foot chunk of that has been damaged, and people are on scene fixing it. And let's hope it doesn't happen again, because none of this is going to end anytime soon. In fact, it's not till the weekend that we really get into a bit of a dry break. 90 to 120 millimeters for Tofino, or just east of, I guess I should say, western shores of Vancouver Island. Through Vancouver, you could easily still see 60 to 90 millimeters. And then we turn our attention to the next big story. Only going to expect to get worse because, believe it or not, this is the same moisture that is attached to the nor'easter that really should be on the east coast. Normally when we get a nor'easter, they track up the eastern seaboard, up through the Canadian side of the border, and then out to sea. Not this time. It's backing up. So we have 15 to 30 centimeters for areas like Montreal, Kingston, and then Peterborough 5 to 10. No big deal for those folks up there that are regularly getting those kinds of amount of snow due to squalls. But look at this, 10 to 15 centimeters for Toronto. So give yourself lots of extra time tomorrow morning. I'll show you how this plays out. You can see this afternoon, this evening, there's the push of the moisture. And keep in mind, this is just one model. So this is one run of one particular model. It's the Canadian model that we're using here. Many of the models are suggesting that heavy snow, that wraparound kind of moisture, and a raw northeast wind. So here we go. Edmonton, you could see 50 centimeters from this nor'easter. What about the Maritimes? St. John, New Brunswick, that's where we find Nate Coleman. Here he is. Nate, and he'll be with us every step of the way like he is with every storm. How many nor'easters has he reported on? So St. John, yeah, there's the rain, there's the mixing line. This was this morning, and then there's the snow. But as we get into the afternoon and the evening, the mixing line does push north. So that means that Sherbrooke and more on the way. And always keep in mind, it doesn't have to take a lot of water for your car to hydroplane. I always remind that because flash flooding happens very quickly and changing conditions. And of course, when you factor in elevation changes and topography out west with the mountains. Let's talk about some other developing stories. Ontario bracing for some snowfall. We'll explain why. How about this as a hint? It's a nor'easter that's going to move as far west as Ontario. Some incredible numbers to share with you, and a state of emergency in BC. All right, let's go to the rain amounts that we've seen already as of 4 a.m. today. Abbotsford, 33 millimeters. Vancouver seen 44. West Van at 71. These are the most impressive numbers, though, near Tofino. Just as we were forecasting, I think well, you got to think that total is over 200 millimeters, but over a few days. So we've been saying the last few days, you know, an additional 90, additional 120 millimeters, still again into tomorrow. So imagine that total by the end of this event. And that's why we're talking about flooding. The south coastal regions like these, heads up, state of emergency already in Courtenay, BC. So we'll keep you posted on this story. Abbotsford, not so much about the rain for you as it is the wind. And you know what, poor timing, because so many people, like myself, have our Christmas decorations up outside, and then all of a sudden you've got your wreath blowing down the street. So make sure you know, maybe pick up some of that stuff first, and then you're not going to be chasing it around, because we're going to see winds in excess of about 80 to 90 kilometers an hour. At least that'll be the gusts. Offshore winds The model picking up at about 60K. So very, very powerful storm, powerful low. The good news is that once this low passes, there's another push of energy, but not quite as big of a storm. And then the weekend doesn't look too bad at all. While all of this is going on, wind warnings on the west coast, the prairies are seeing a lack of weather, but they have all the warm air in the country. Actually, that's not true. We have a bit of warm air, of course, working into the nor'easter. But can you believe it? It's Calgary is seeing 10 degrees today, basking in the sunshine in Regina with 2 or 3 degrees. Now we go to Ontario, Ottawa in particular. That's where we find Kasia Badurka, who is tracking this next nor'easter. Here she is.
Oh, welcome to your winter. All right, thank you so much, John. All the best and good luck with your shoveling. We send it to you inside with your weather story.
He's kind of right. It is winter. Well, actually, it's not, meteorologically speaking, yeah, but it is the season where we talk about winter weather. December 21st, of course, is when the winter solstice actually does happen. Cornwall, 10 centimeters of snow has already fallen in your area. Montreal at 9, Montjoly 4, Gaspé region 6, and Bathurst at 17 centimeters. But here's the interesting part that stands out on this map to me: 10 to 15 centimeters for Toronto. It's been a while since we've seen those kinds of amounts, and you know what even 5 centimeters can do to the major highways in the GTA. Heads up, this will be over the next 24 to 48 hours. The bulk of the snow, folks, is going to fall tonight into tomorrow morning. Your commute, I highly recommend. If you can work from home, work from home. But if you need to, give yourself lots of extra time if you need to come into the city. 15 to 30 centimeters through Brockville. Those are no small numbers either. And then Edmundston, it's going to be all straight snow up to 50 centimeters for northern New Brunswick, while more of this will fall in the Maritime state. Welcome back on this Wednesday. A Troy-built snowblower will come in handy, especially if you live in northern New Brunswick through the Ottawa Valley. Get ready for it. We haven't seen a real big storm in a while for Ontario, and I mean, we've had lots of squalls, but here we go again. It's going to be widespread snow, even including the GTA, 5 to 10 centimeters. I'll talk about it coming up in just a minute, but I want to draw your attention to the moisture on the west coast, and this is what it looks like on the streets. This was yesterday, but much of the same on the way again for today. In fact, Metro Vancouver now within the wind warning as well. So the strong winds, the heavy rain, tough getting it around the city. I know Deb Midietz has been reporting all morning long in these conditions, and it looks nasty out there, especially along the shorelines. And as a result, we have the potential for floods again. So we saw this last night. We saw a seawall that was actually broken or partly destroyed because of the winds and the waves. Courtney under a state of emergency in some of the other areas that we're keeping a close eye on for flooding. Comox at 81 millimeters, Squamish at 113. These are pretty impressive numbers, and yet we still could get over 100 millimeters of rain by the time it's done. Now to the Ontario story. So I'd mentioned, we get a lot of squalls, so maybe 5 to 10 centimeters or, maybe 15 centimeters. Not a big deal for central Ontario, but 10 to 15 for Toronto into eastern Ontario, including you, Hamilton. It's going to be nasty out on the roads. Kasia Badurka is reporting and tracking this storm in Ottawa. Here she is. Use your knees, right? When you're shoveling that heavy, wet snow, make sure you bend at the knees. Don't just use the back. All right. Or just get a snowblower built by Troy-Bilt. That's what I would recommend. All right. Let's take a look here. You can see northwest, direction with the storm is going to usher in a northeast wind and bring in that precipitation. Now, keep in mind, if you say, well, it doesn't look too bad, it kind of breaks up. This is just one model projection of what could be happening. So many other models are in agreement that we could be seeing some hefty snow amounts right through Ontario, up that 401 eastern corridor, as I mentioned, into eastern Ontario, and then up through the Ottawa Valley. Montreal, you'll be seeing 10 to 25 centimeters with this storm. Edmundston, looking at 50 plus centimeters with the wind. And with the winds comes the storm surge potential along the St. Lawrence. So much to talk about. We'll be tracking it every step of the way. So is Nathan Coleman. He's in St. John, where they're going to see predominantly rain. Here's the latest from him. Yeah, great advice. And for whether you're on the West Coast or the East Coast, maybe a good idea to secure your holiday decorations because, I know that your wreath can end up down the street if you get some strong winds, and you're going to get that. Let's take a look here at the mixing line. This is important. This morning, our mixing line was situated from about the townships just south of Plaster Rock into Bathurst, and then all straight rain. What we mean by that, that's that separation of cold air where we can support snowfall, and then the warm air where it's all going to fall as rain. And by the way, you're getting into like temperatures around 9-10 degrees. So kind of spring-like. That mixing line does shift northwest as the afternoon and the evening goes on. So Sherbrooke, Plaster Rock, we have that typical temperature profile where we have warm air overrunning cold air.